Hello, and welcome to a new SAP S4HANA Cloud Knowledge snippet. In today's snippet, we will once again be talking about advanced variant configuration. To be more specific, we shall be looking at the analytical reporting capabilities that exist within SAP S4HANA Cloud that allow you to report on configurable materials and what it is that you need to set up in your system in order to be able to leverage this capability. Now, before we delve into the system and look at how we can achieve that, let's quickly kind of set the scene about what it is that we are trying to do, or why we would need to do this. If we go back to our usual example of the MacBook Pro, the MacBook Pro is a product that can be sold to customers in a variety of processors, of memory size, of storage size, and of softwares that the customer might decide to have installed on it. However, by definition, a configurable material is a generic product code. So this product code, MacBook Pro, could represent in one sales order a type of processor, a kind of memory size, a type of storage, and a type of software installed. But under a different sales order, this very same product code could represent something very different, i.e. a different processor, a different memory, and a different storage size. So one quickly understands that reporting against this generic material code is not good enough. You need to understand beyond the number of units that you have sold and beyond the sales volumes that you have achieved, which of these configurations work or do not work for your organizations. Which processor is it that is most popular with my customers? What is the typical memory size that my customers want to have installed on their MacBook Pro? Similarly, what software is it that I'm selling that is popular? Also, internally, you might also want to have other questions to which you need answers, such as, in which geographies am I selling a particular configuration better than others? What is it that differentiates my customer tastes in these geographies? This might then also have a flow-on effect on how you go about planning your products and your entire supply chain operations. So it is absolutely critical that you are able to set up this reporting capability for your configurable materials. Now, hopefully we've set the scene here, so let's dive into the system and see how we would go about setting this up. Now that we're in the S4HANA Cloud system, let's look at one key piece of master data that you would have inevitably have had to set up when you created your configurable materials. I am talking about the class. When you set up a configurable material, you can assign to it at least one, you have to assign at least to it one class, but you could also assign to it more than one class that hold the various characteristics that would be used when you configured your product. So let's quickly look at the class that has been assigned to our MacBook Pro. So I am in the modeling environment, and we can see that for our material, if I open up the hierarchy, I have indeed a class of type 300 named PRE-MB Pro that has been assigned to my product. Underneath this class, I can see the various characteristics that are assigned to this particular class. Now, depending on how you set up your own configurable materials, it could be that there are certain characteristics that you would have set up that are purely used at runtime to store temporary information, such as the results of calculations, as an example. I.e., what I'm trying to say here is that not all the characteristics that you see here are necessarily characteristics on which I want to report. You can also possibly see that if you followed some of the previous snippets that we did on advanced variance configuration, is that we have one characteristic called additional software. Now, this characteristic is a multi-value characteristic which can hold no value, one value, or two values. Now, from a user point of view, from a user UI point of view, it's nice and convenient to have one characteristics where the salesperson is going to select one or two values if he needs to add software to the MacBook Pro. However, I would just like to warn you that for the purposes of the reporting that we will be trying to set up later on, multi-value characteristics can for the moment not be used. However, for the purposes of my reporting, I want to be able to understand in which configurations I am selling Final Cut Pro and or Logic Pro. So in order to be able to acquire this information, what I have done is that I have also created a separate characteristic called Final Cut Pro Installed and another one called Logic Pro Installed. And then with a small procedure, I'm essentially updating these two characteristics based on the choice that the salesperson would have made here. For the purposes of my report, I will therefore try to go about adding these characteristics to my report. Now, in order to be able to report on configurable materials, you need to create a CDS. But before you create the CDS, you also have to create a class of a specific type, which is of class type 399, in which you are going to indicate all of the characteristics that you will be using to do your reporting against. So let's quickly look at one class that I have set up. So if I go to a class menu, I have another class called PREMB Pro as well, but the only difference is that this time this class is of type 399, not 300. So I've already created it and assigned to it some characteristics. But what I'm going to do now is just assign to it the two additional characteristics that pertain to the software Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. So what I want to do is I want to add this characteristic and this one to the class type 399. So let's just go ahead and add those in there. So it's going to be FC Pro and the other one, which is LG Pro. So what this means, or rather what's going to happen now, is that I am going to go and generate a CDS by referencing this particular class. And from this point on, the system will understand that I want to create a CDS that is going to help me report on these characteristics here, which is not the exhaustive list of the characteristics that I had in my class. Because like I said, there are certain characteristics that I may just not be interested to report against. Either the information is not that important for what I'm trying to achieve, or like I said, it could just be that these characteristics are going to hold information, temporary information that I've created just to hold the results of calculation, as an example. So now that I have enhanced this particular class with the additional two characteristics that I want to be able to track, I'm just going to save this particular class. So let's go back to the main Fiori tile group that holds all of the variant configuration related application. Now what you want to do here is you want to find this particular tile here called classification configuration CDS views. So let's go ahead and fire it up. I'm here going to indicate the class type is 399. I'm not going to indicate an object type. I'm just going to PREMB Pro. Now this is the name of the class of type 399 to which I just added my two characteristics. I'm also going to have the checkbox include characteristic value description active, because obviously just having the code may not be sufficient. I want to also be able to have the English description of the characteristic value codes, and I also want to see the list before it goes ahead and generates it. So I'm just going to execute that. It should then show me a list. So the system is saying, okay, this is what I'm about to do. I'm going to generate this CDS, and the name is going to be 1y1 399. So again, we have the 1y1, which is the customer namespace, 399, which is the class type, and then PREMBRO, which is my class name, and then we have the suffix Mara. Now you might be tempted to say, well, I'm trying to report against sales orders, so shouldn't I be seeing something like, you know, VBAC or VBAP or any one of the other sales order related table? In short, the answer is no. So don't worry about it, just accept the fact that it is Mara, because what we are trying to pick here is the individual configurations of materials that have been done in your various sales orders. So once we're happy with that, we're just going to select it and we are going to say execute. And what is now going to happen is that the system is going to generate or regenerate a CDS. Now, I've already generated this CDS when I only had my 4 characteristics. So what I'm also trying to illustrate here is the fact that you can, of course, enhance the CDS as the configuration of your products might be enhanced. So the system tells me that the view has been generated, and I can actually now go into the custom CDS application and already launch this particular CDS to see the content of what is in there. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to launch the application custom CDS. And here I will look for that 399 PREMB Pro. Here we go. Let's open this up a little bit. So we have here the CDS that we saw being indicated in the previous step. So it's also published. Let's go into this particular CDS. We can see that there are some parameters pertaining to the key date and the language. And then here we find the various characteristics that were part of this class 399. So let's go and preview the information that we have in there. I'll just accept those parameters. And so there we have it. You see, we have the configurable material. We have reference to an I-based component, and we'll see the importance of that in just a minute. We also have the various valuations of those configurations in the sales orders that we had, that is also now being shown in this particular screen. So far this is really great stuff. However, what I am missing is now the reference to a particular sales order and sales order items, so that I can have a full report that tells me both customer information, pricing information, quantity information. So what we now want to do is to marry this particular CDS that we have here with one of the sales order related ones. And what we'll do is we'll look at trying to combine this particular CDS with the sales order item cube. Now, I'll give you a quick tip, which is something that kind of threw me off for a little while, is that in this particular CDS, there is this field here, which is quite important, which is called I-base component. Now, this field will be important because this is the one that we will use to marry those two CDSs together, the one of the sales order with this one here. So the only thing that threw me off for a little while is that in the sales order item cube, the field is not named I-base component, it's named product configuration. So let's go ahead and marry up these two CDSs. So like I said, we are going to marry up the sales order item cube. So let's go and find it, sales order item cube. So let's select it and go ahead and create. So as usual, I'll give it my naming convention. So it's going to be C for CDS, my initials, and we'll call it SLS conf data. So sales order configuration data. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to add the other data source, the other CDS that we have just generated. So let's go ahead and add an associated data source. And what we're looking for here is a YY1 underscore 399 PRE MB Pro, which is this one right here. So we're going to select it and add it. Now we need to also hold or maintain the information for the join, i.e. what are the pieces of information that is going to help the system join these two CDSs together. Well, like I said, we have in the PRE399 the CDS that we just generated, we have that field called iBase component, but in the sales order item cube, the field that we are looking for is the one that is named product configuration. Okay, so again, you have the label that is indicated there. So that's a good tip. And then in the value that we have here, we need to find the product configuration field, which is right there. So this is how the system will understand how these two tables or CDSs are to be joined. So let's click on OK. Let's move on to the field selection. So I'll do the field selection and accelerate that because you don't really need to look at that. And so now that I've selected all of the sales order item cube related fields, I can now at the bottom of the field selection see all of the characteristics from the CDS that I just generated a few seconds ago appear in my screen as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all the ones that I want. So I'm going to take the characteristic code and descriptions that I had selected when I created my CDS. So I'm just going to save this, and already now I can preview the information that I have in those two joint CDSs. So I'm just going to type in the parameters that are needed to launch it. And so already I have some preview data coming out. However, what is happening at the moment is you see that I have all of these sales orders that have been married with my CDS for which there is no configuration information. And indeed, that is because we can see that some sales order items that we've got here have got the product configuration 0, which means that these are not configured items. So at least I can see that my report or my join is working because I am getting some sales order information as well as the characteristics evaluated in the sales orders showing up. But what I now need to do is I need to exclude the lines for which there is no configuration. So let me just quickly do a copy of the rather long product configuration code that doesn't really interest me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one step back into my CDS. What I also want to do is I need to find the item, the name of the field by which I'm going to filter. So the one that I'm going to use to exclude all of those zeros, which is going to be sales order item cube product configuration. So I'm just going to copy that field. Go into the filters, I'm going to edit the filter and add the field that I just copied. And what I want to do is I want to pick all of the sales order item cube product configuration information where the code is obviously not equal to this long string of zeros. So let's put that in there. Let's say apply. Again, save the draft version of my CDS. And once again, I can now quickly have a preview. Okay, so now this is a little bit better in the sense that the information that I am getting always has a IBase or a product configuration number that is different to 0, but you can also see here that in this particular report I am pulling other configurable materials for which the characteristics do not line up with the ones of my MacBook Pro. So I'm just going to quickly go back and add an additional filter, and what we'll do is we are going to add a filter on the material. Now I apologize, this is going to be somewhat quick and dirty, but what I'm going to say is so I want to exclude all the items where the product configuration is different to a string of zeros, and I'm also going to say where the material code is going to be greater or equal to PREMB Pro, which is the code of my configurable material. I'm going to say apply, save the draft, and before I do the preview, I'm just going to quickly once again update the parameters to avoid having to type it every time. So I'm just going to say M and USD. Once again I save and then preview the data. Okay, so this is kind of good. This is what I'm hoping to get out of this particular report. Now the good thing as well is that you can see that in terms of material, because of that little filter that I added where I said I only want to see things where the material code is PRMB Pro or greater than that, the system has also included the variant materials. So not just the configurable materials, but also the variant materials. And we can also see that for those, the configuration data is coming across nicely. Okay, so now that we are satisfied with the join that we have created between those two CDSs, we can actually go about and publish this particular CDS, this joined CDS, and then use it in a custom analytical query. Okay, so quickly, one thing I forgot to do, which is to also select the additional scenarios of creating the analytical CDS, and I'm also going to select OData API because it could be that I might want to have this CDS consumed from an external application via this OData that I could then wrap in a custom communication scenario. So once again, let me save and publish that. Okay, so now my CDS has been generated. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to build a custom analytical query, and we will then use the CDS that we just created as the basis for this query. So we're going to say new. Again, we're going to say, so it's a query, sales, and so it's going to be sales order configuration, and once again we need to go and find our data source, so it's YCPRE. So this is the CDS that we just created with the sales order item cube and the configuration data for MacBook Pros joined together. So let's just quickly give it a name. We'll call it sales order data MacBook Pro. We go to the field selection and we have all the fields that we selected in our CDS that are available. And for the purpose of this report, I'm not going to really bother about setting them up as a column or row fields. I'm just going to say okay, save this draft. And once we've done that, we can preview the information. So Design Studio opens. System asks me for the parameters. So it's the M exchange rate, USD as the currency. We'll pick the date, we'll pick the language, which is going to be EN, and then we click on OK. Now the data that comes through at this point is just the total net value and the total order quantity for the data that is within that joined CDS. And so what we can then do is we can start to pull in the information that we had selected in that class type 399. So I want to see the graphics card description show up in there. So I have the different kinds of graphics cards that were part of my configuration, and already there you can see that I'm having a lot more pertinent information than just the material code. I can already see that out of those 10 products that were sold, 6 of them had this graphics card, 1 of them had this graphics card, and 3 of those had this graphics card. So already the information that I'm getting is much more pertinent. The other things that we can of course get, which was the other characteristics, we can get the processor information in there as well. So again, I can see that nice drill down showing me the kinds of processors that my customers have chosen to have. Let's see also the storage, so what kind of hard disk configurations was it that the customers wanted. So you essentially get the idea that you can pull in either on a column or row based the information that you had in your CDS. You can then of course have this information in a tabular version. You can also pull in a graphic, so maybe this isn't super meaningful, so let's see if we can maybe change the chart to something different, like maybe a pie chart. So again, now this is a little bit more, I guess, interesting in that it is showing me in terms of cheese slices, if you like, the various combinations that I have sold to my customers. So that's already a lot more pertinent. Yeah, so there you go. So the easy steps to carry out in order to be able to report on your configurable materials. So a quick summary is: number one, you need to create a class type 399 that holds the various characteristics that you're going to be using to report against your configurable materials. You then need to generate the CDS for the class 399 that you had created. Also note that it is not necessary for you to assign this class 399 to anything, whether it's the material or any other object in the system. It can just live its life on its own. Then once you've generated the CDS referring to the class 399, you can then join that CDS with, for example, the sales order item cube. But of course, remember that in the CDS of the class 399, the field is called iBase, and in the sales order item cube, the field is called product configuration. Then you can of course generate your CDS that you consume in a custom query such as the one that we have done here. You could then also go on to publish the custom query as a fully fledged and separate application. And also recall that when we created the joined CDS, we activated the OData checkbox, so I could then go on to wrap this OData in a custom communication scenario to let an external application consume that CDS. So there you go. Analytical reporting on configurable materials, hopefully made easy.